I think it's less a conversation around, is this a corporation? Is there a hierarchy? Is there bureaucracy? I think to a certain extent, in order to just get stuff done, you're going to need some level of decision making and, just giving people responsibility and accountability for that. But I think it's more a question of, is this sort of like a self-sustaining engine that's working towards a shared goal?
I would say retention and relationship building are the top problems in DAOs. There's, my basic theory would be that acquisition is really easy in Web3, but the cost of easier acquisition is harder retention.
About our current financial system. Hi everyone, and welcome back to another exciting episode of New Forum, where we bring you awesome founders, creators, and visionaries on our podcast. New Forum is a community podcast powered by New Foundation, and it's our aim to spark informative and educative conversations on the topics of crypto, the metaverse, NFTs, and everything Web3. And on today's episode, I'm super happy to have with me Kinjal, Shah, and David Phelps. Kinjal is a senior associate at Blockchain Capital and also part of DAOs such as the ecodao. And David is publicly known for being the founder of jokedao and is an investor at Cowfund. And I'm super excited to talk with them today about token-gated communities, DAOs, token models, and also collective financing. Hi, Kinjal. Hi, David. I'm super happy to have you here today.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Hello, hello.
Yeah, so David, I want to start off with you today.
Uh-oh, I'm on the spot. Yeah, let's go.
So we know that you're the founder of jokedao, and now we kind of have to prove that. So what is one of the best jokes in Web3 that you've heard so far?
I'm excited to say there have been 0 good jokes that have ever been told on jokedao. Which shows you, just how important this is of what we're doing. That one day we will find a good joke. It's out there in the wilds, and just takes a lot of sourcing.
You should definitely invent the joke NFT or get some jokes going, or
We do have those. We do have those every week. Kinjal actually has one, as do I. Every week, we mint the winner as an NFT, and then we sell it. I wouldn't say any of those are good jokes. Some of them might qualify as jokes, however. So that's something.
I've chuckled. I've
You chuckled. Okay,
yeah,
okay.
I've chuckled.
To be fair, like, it's never first place that wins. So, you are kind of by definition getting like a little third tier joke.
So is it like a meme, or how does it look like?
So we have the way I think about jokedao is it's kind of like a game and a game engine. And so the game is the joke race, and the game engine is jokedao, which is a governance platform that powers the joke race. The governance platform jokedao is, it's being used by like places like Bankless and MakerDAO and DeveloperDAO, but that's all boring. I think what we're really interested in is the joke race, which is the weekly contest we do. We actually just opened it today for submissions. Every Thursday we open it for submissions. Every Friday we do voting. And the joke race is a weekly themed contest to submit and vote on jokes. And it's a strategy game because every week the winner changes. So sometimes it's second place, sometimes it's third place, sometimes it's last place. This week it's the joke closest to 50,000 votes without going over. It can really vary. It's kind of like a joke on a joke, because the real joke is that no good joke can win because it's never first place.
Interesting. How did you came up with that whole idea? You were like, what came through your mind when you did that?
Yeah. So this is it came out of a couple of conversations I was having in December last year. I had been talking to Daria from Layer 3 about some sort of like contest where you would compete with GPT-3. And then I've been talking to Ashita from Masari about some sort of profile of really bad Silicon Valley jokes, and like what would it look like to have like a stand-up comedian in Silicon Valley telling terrible jokes. And then I was like, what if I combine these two things and you have like a joke contest where you have to compete against GPT-3, who's trying to tell funnier jokes than you are. And so I spent an hour in December in like New York cold, just writing out like this proposal by hand of like what this would look like. And I got to the end of this and I was like, wait, this is actually the best thing I've ever worked on, because I realized that the implications for it are so much bigger in terms of creating a platform where anybody can submit options and then vote on them. And so then that can be applied to all these other use cases like giveaways and grants, hackathons, and DAO governance as well. And so I got really excited that I could really have this Trojan horse where you'd have the absolute dumbest thing I could come up with, which is a contest for jokes, and actually have it be a primitive for this much bigger thing.
I love it. Actually, there should be a comedian in Web3 or in the crypto world going to all these conferences. Amazing that you really turned this into something. Kinjal, I want to know, like, besides being part of jokedao and doing these things, I want to know your kind of background and how you found into the Web3 world.
I joined the crypto Web3 space in 2017. Actually came in as a Bitcoin person, although that's definitely shifted over the years. Still love Bitcoin, but that's kind of my entry point. I came in as working at Fidelity at the time and got put on a project specifically looking at Bitcoin, and then decided I wanted to work on the space more broadly. And that's how I found my way over to Blockchain Capital. And so I'm a full-time investor there, and then also spend a lot of time on DAOs. So things like ecodao, jokedao, Komorebi, which is another DAO that I helped co-found. Those are all parts of the work that I've been doing in the space.
Amazing. So you guys, as active DAO creators and DAO contributors, what are the most challenging things that you face right now? I mean, you have a wide background because you're also investors. So it seems like is it a big struggle to handle both of these sides, or what do you think? Like, what has been the biggest struggles right now?
Well, the nice thing about helping run a DAO and seeing all the problems with it is it informs you why you should not be investing in 99% of the space, which is unfortunate to say. You know, the problems of the space are also the opportunities of the space, right? So on the one hand, you know, I spend half my time looking at this and thinking, man, none of this stuff works. This is not investable. Like, stay away. And then the other half of the time, I think, oh, this is a huge opportunity because whoever solves this is going to be gigantic. So there's almost a cognitive dissonance in some ways of looking at the problems. Kinjal, I'd be curious your take on, like, you know, major problems. I would say retention and relationship building are the top problems in DAOs. There's, you know, my basic theory would be that acquisition is really easy in Web3, but the cost of easier acquisition is harder retention. And the reason for that is that it's so easy to acquire people with tokens and airdropping them tokens and getting them into a community. But precisely because of that, it's also easy for them to then be distracted and drawn to another community as well. It's, you know, people are passionate zealots for all of 1 or 2 days before something else draws their attention, and the next sparkly object pulls them away. So easy acquisition actually means hard retention a lot of the times. And, you know, given that these are literally Web3 communities that are totally online, there aren't really ways that people are building relationships with each other. And so having co-ownership as a basis for relationship building doesn't really make sense. You know, it's kind of like saying, let's all buy a house together, and then, like, what are the chances we're actually going to want to live there together and be friends, right? It's not that likely. So I think, like, as much as possible, it's thinking, you know, how can we actually develop ways that are non-financial, that actually are relationship building, because out of that, then you will have incentives for people to buy things together and to co-own, etc. But we've kind of put the cart before the horse in, like, prioritizing the financial primitive before the relationship piece. And I think it's actually, yeah, it comes at a huge cost. When you're just surrounded by a bunch of mercenaries, people get very burnt out as well. And so, yeah, right now, the sentiment is obviously very negative on DAOs, understandably because of that. But I do, you know, I would like to think there still is something there if you can do fun things like, I don't know, telling jokes every week and then voting on them.
I would maybe just add that I think tokens have been able to prove that they're effective at bootstrapping early days, but I don't think that they've proven to be effective at not only retaining, but evolving with their community. So, you know, oftentimes DAOs, they don't, like, there's no end point. So it's like, at what point does it not make sense anymore to hold the token? And oftentimes that's when they stop incentivizing you by effectively, you know, paying you with token incentives. And so we need more than that, whether that's relationship building or other types of like, utility or usage in a DAO, you just need more than the token, I'd say.
Something Kinjal and I have talked a lot about is like how lacking recurring revenue is in Web3. It's very rare to see it, and I think usually a lot of those conversations we've had about this are based on like technical reasons. It's really hard to do recurring revenue with smart contracts. You basically have to like front load them with a bunch of money to use over time and then set up bots to do that. So it's tricky. But also just like the way that the space is set up, where it's based on like one-time buying something instead of subscribing to it. And so buying means that you now have a one-time sale and then you don't come back to have recurring revenue. But I do think there's another side of this too, which is that so many DAOs are set up for these kind of like one-time transactions of like a one-time airdrop. I think this is what Kinjal's getting at, where it's here's the token. Now you're part of the community. Like come join this thing, and there is no real process that is ongoing over time and recurring in the way that good relationships are recurring. Like good relationships, you set up rituals, you go get dinner every Thursday, whatever it is. That's what's missing in a lot of DAOs as well. And I think it's related to the recurring revenue problem because we've just conceived of all these spaces as these like one-time deals that get a lot of attention, a lot of traction, and then 2 months later it's dead. And that's the normal, discords are almost like these like Wild West towns where like people march in and they set up and they have a shootout and they like go to the bar and then they leave and they go to the next one and then it's a ghost town afterwards. So there's no stability, right? That's really keeping people to have recurring relationships in these spaces.
Wow, like that's really deep. If you think about maybe in 2 years we will see like an archive of projects that have been wiped out and have a comeback maybe later or something like that. And like you said, it's really like growing a community and growing something sustainable is like you want to grow a plant, you have to water it and you have to keep investing in it. And so my next question would be like, what kind of token models do you currently see are working and what is the most suitable for these communities, and what have you been proven that works for you or doesn't work for you?
Inflationary tokens, I think, are really necessary for a lot of different reasons, but one of those is that you can regularly reward your contributors, and while you're rewarding your contributors and participants, you're diluting those who do not participate as well. And so you're not actively penalizing them, they still maintain their tokens, but you're over time putting more and more power into the hands of actual contributors on a recurring basis as well. And so I think that like that's the kind of token model that we need to like start moving towards, is ones where it can be minted regularly, it can be paid out regularly, it can be given to contributors for supporting projects, and it's ongoing over time so that, if you're just a holder, you can still make money because other people are contributing and incentivized to contribute, but you're going to be diluted as well, right? And so it really helps to ensure that we're balancing out tendency to move towards inequality. As more and more holders take more and more tokens, it goes into the hands of very few people with a lot of power, and it actually helps decentralize it towards the people who actually are participating.
I think the same thing, or at least a similar idea, goes to staking tokens where, if you're not participating, you're not getting penalized directly per se, but you're missing out on staking rewards and therefore you're, it's the same idea, right? You're just getting diluted. And then also this idea of staking as a way to build up the economic security of a particular chain, I think is important, and something that obviously we just saw Ethereum kind of move over to with the merge. I think it's going to be a big trend.
Restaking is also a really powerful shift that we're starting to see with EigenLayer. And I think this is going to be pretty game changing. The idea that you can have like a single token and restake it multiple times on multiple services to validate them. Of course, it adds a lot of risk because if any of those are wrong, you get slashed. But you can also get tremendous rewards from the same token. And it's a pretty good security model because it means that instead of having to bootstrap an entire new token for security, where you have this chicken and egg problem of like trying to get people to set up validators to get the token, but then they're the ones who already have the token. You can actually make sure that it's already like a token that is already decentralized, held by a lot of different parties, stable, and giving them new rights as well. So I'm working on a piece right now on aggregation theory in Web3, and I actually I take I think pretty strong view that over time we're actually going to see value accumulate or accrue to very few tokens that will have many, many different uses, even for multiple communities as well. The tendency of the past bull cycle was to have every single community have their own token. And this is incredible fragmentation. On a security level, it's very dangerous to have that kind of fragmentation of liquidity because not everyone can buy in and stake and support. But even, just in terms of social tokens, it doesn't really make sense, right? It's not like you want a separate Discord for every single musician that you care about. You probably want to have them all aggregated under a brand or a gallery, something like that. And I think the same thing is true for tokens, where I think there's going to be really exciting models in the future. Nouns is sort of pointing to this, where you could have 8 different projects all built on the same token, getting grants from the same token, maybe even competing with each other, but using the same token, knowing that what they're giving up in terms of having 100% of the rewards of their work, they're making up for because they have a stabler base in depending on everyone else who's also using that token to give it value. And so you can almost imagine these kind of like decentralized Microsofts in the future, where you think about Microsoft being like all these different companies in one, and you can imagine like that happened permissionlessly, where it's like everyone agreed to use the Microsoft token and like start their own project and get a grant, to do it. But fundamentally, the token itself, I think, will take a lot of value, and I actually think there's going to be very few tokens that have tremendous value, but the ones that do will have an outsized share.
That's really interesting because when Web3 came around, we always thought about creator pools and creator tokens, and now we see that there's a lot of friction with like exchanging the tokens and everything. So interesting, you're hearing your take on that. I'm wondering, like, from an investor standpoint, Kinjal, what are the things that you look out for the most right now when you look at projects in Web3?
Yeah, I mean, last year was obviously a really busy and vibrant year in terms of experimentation and, lots of like flashy new ideas. I think from our perspective at Blockchain Capital, a lot of what we're focused on is more infrastructure level. How do we solve some of like the biggest challenges as it relates to things like what David mentioned around retention of users, but also onboarding new users, technical challenges around scaling. I think the next 5 or 10 years are really going to be predicated on the right infrastructure being in place in order to actually make some of these applications that we are dreaming up, work and be sustainable over the long term.
And if you look at DAOs and you look at the structure of a company, what are some of the really like the positives for you that makes you excited still about DAOs? I mean, we mentioned a bit of the negatives, but in terms of like collective capital and financing and being in a DAO, what are some of the positives that you have experienced?
I'm still super excited, and I think I find a lot of energy in this idea that a DAO can be sort of self-sustaining, where everyone is sort of bonded together by the same shared idea or like a common goal, but you have your own sort of autonomy in terms of contributing to that community. It really feels like it's much more of a movement. I think DAOs that sort of are able to embody that are probably going to be more successful. I think like one of the most successful DAOs would be the Nouns DAO. There's so many different projects going on at one time, but at the end of the day, I think they're all working towards adding value to the Nouns brand. They're just doing it in like their own different way. So I think that's something that I want to keep seeing in the DAO space. I think it's less a conversation around, is this a corporation? Is there hierarchy? Is there bureaucracy? I think to a certain extent, in order to just get stuff done, you're going to need some level of decision making and, just giving people responsibility and accountability for that. But I think it's more a question of, is this sort of like a self-sustaining engine that's working towards a shared goal? I think that's super powerful.
And here, I mean, we care a lot about like the single creators and the single, like, let's say designers and content creators. That's like kind of the people we care about a lot. And I'm wondering, I think you wrote a post on NFT consumerism and NFT structure in general. It's really like, I have a lot of friends who making their own NFTs, but they haven't really seen the revenue. Where do you see like the whole NFT consumerism going, like the NFT art in general? Do you think there's going to be like a balanced scale in the future, or what is your prediction on that?
I think the way I see it is just like any consumer good today, there's going to be really high scale, expensive NFTs, and then there's going to be like the everyday NFTs. I think the key for me is making them more consumable and less of a investment story and less of a financialized asset. I hope that there's obviously pathways for artists and creators to make money and, you know, be able to sort of retain the revenue that's generated from the sale of their work. But at the same time, I don't want NFTs to become synonymous with high priced JPEGs that are flipped. I think that's like a really dangerous path to go down. And so I think we're going to see more, you know, NFTs that are more around collecting things or showcasing your likes and your interests, or becoming a member of a particular community, or showing patronage to a particular artist, and less about, you know, I bought this really expensive, you know, monkey picture, for lack of a better word.
David, what I know you're waiting there. I want to hear your opinion on that. Let's call it the evolution of the NFT, and where do you see like creators? I mean, we started off this space really, right, to really force in the decentralization for creators as well, so they can have a equal share of, like, let's call it like that, have their own kind of economy going. So I'm wondering, where do you see this all plan out with like NFTs and Web3 tools for creators? Like, what is the future gonna hold like for all these creators around the world? And I mean, it's a very tough question to ask, but I'm just wondering your take on it.
Yeah, I think, you know, the irony of the next cycle is that we need massive non-financial use cases for tokens in order for tokens to have financial value. If we just see tokens as financial assets and nothing else, then it's a bet. Every token is a bet on itself, right? You're just like, you're buying it in the bet that it goes up. And it's a reflexive logic that can't hold past a bull market. So it works during a bull market because everyone buys in knowing that they're buying in for it to go up, but that's it. And that kind of reflexive finance is pretty limited, and I think it's pretty much run its course. It's also disappointing that that's been the case when tokens are these incredible digital primitives for all types of ownership and certificates of ownership. And that can be ownership of art, of governance rights, of your data, of the attestations of like on-chain activity, like reputation, etc. So like here we're sitting on what I think is like one of the major inventions of the 21st century, which is smart contracts and tokens. And to see them only for like use as money is just an absolute waste of like what's actually interesting about these things. So yeah, you know, when it comes to creators, like they have tokens, and those can be NFTs or ERC20s. Like there has to be a use for that. Like communities need to be able to use that in some ways, and that's a practical thing to say. Like if they can't use it, why would they hold it, right? Like if they can vote on what content they want people to create. So we've seen this at jokedao, right? Like Packy McCormick like went to his community and said, what do you want my next article to be on? And you know, there was a #1 response that he responded to, but he also got a lot of great responses. Kinjal had a really thoughtful one that she put in there too, and now he sourced a lot of really valuable insight from his community about what they want to hear. And meanwhile, his community, in theory, if this is a tokenized community, which it's not, but like super fans could buy up way more of the tokens to have a way greater say in what they want them to create, right? And so the non-financial utility actually creates this financial use case for it, which is really, really exciting. So there's that side where you want people to actually be able to use it, because like otherwise they're not, why would they hold it otherwise? But it's also just the shift over the past 10 years. Like everything has moved towards user-generated content, right? Like everyone has become a creator. Everybody is like engaging in creator communities, not as fans, but as creators themselves. And fans are creators in today's world, right? And the way that you show that you're a fan is you remix, right? You take someone else's TikTok and you do your own version of it as well. So like in thinking about like, you know, NFTs, etc., I think it's really important to think about like, how are these being used by fans in creative ways that actually, as Kinjal said, can showcase their own interests, their own passions, their own desires, and their own form of self-expression. Because fundamentally, like what the internet is scariest for, but also most promising for, is allowing people to express themselves in ways that they wouldn't be comfortable in real life. And NFTs should be a powerful tool for doing that, and they haven't been. Instead, they've just been a status symbol, and that's so boring and so sad, and such a waste of an incredible technology, which NFTs absolutely are.
Well said. I'm wondering right now, what are some of the personal projects that you guys are focused on and that you're really excited about? Kinjal, what is that on your side?
I guess personally been spending a lot of time working on Komorebi, and Komorebi is basically a DAO that's funding female and non-binary founders in crypto. So it's an investment DAO. And we're working on our next version of it, which we're hoping to put some more elements on chain and also sort of productize what value or what sort of services are offered by the DAO. So we're trying to almost take the investment DAO model and turn it into a service DAO where you have individuals that are offering up their help on legal or on engineering or whatever it may be, and then matching that to our group of founders. So that's a really fun project to be working on. I think something that I've just spent a lot of time thinking about, I'm excited about. And then in terms of like the broader community, I've been pretty deep down the Cosmos rabbit hole. I think there's just like a lot of really exciting things going there with the release of their new paper on Atom 2.0, and then just like a better understanding of a lot of the projects that are building there. It feels like Cosmos is very electric and alive right now, and so that's been super fun to just sort of observe and dig into.
Before we go ahead with David, I want to ask you, have you seen like a positive trend with more diverse investments for, let's say, female founders?
I think over the past year, we've seen more than 150 female non-binary founders come through the Komorebi sort of investment pipeline, which has been great. I think it's one of those instances where, if you're looking for it and you're asking the community, a lot of people come forward, but you're not necessarily going to come across it on your day to day. And so it's been great to just see a lot more female founders enter into the space. I think a big part of that was honestly all of the NFT and creator movement last year really brought in a whole new demographic that I think happens to skew slightly more female, and that's resulted in a lot more female founders, which has been great.
David, we want to know what have you been working on and what you're currently excited about?
Yeah. So I talked a bit about jokedao before, which is really my main pursuit right now. I'll put in a quick word for Cowfund and ecodao. Ecodao, Kinjal and I actually co-founded with Ria, and part of what I love about ecodao is it's a pop-up DAO. It really goes to what Kinjal was saying before about like sustainability is really the unlock for DAOs. ecodao will probably never make any money. It probably won't exist most of the year, but we can set up templates and protocols for when people want to do events that will have money go to charity and support the rainforest and other environmental causes, that they can do it when they want to. And it's effectively a pop-up DAO. It should be financially sustainable, give people the resources to throw parties when they want and have that go to a good cause. And I love that. Like, I love that this will never be, an investable DAO. This will never make anyone a lot of money. But it can continue existing when it wants to or when anyone wants it to. And it's in the hands of anybody who wants to, use what it's built to do something fun and something good. Cowfund, I'll say a quick word about. It's a Web3 Angels Collective. Each angel gets full autonomy whether or not they want to invest in a given project. Founders also get full autonomy whether or not to take an individual angel's check. So in that sense, it's completely not an investment DAO. Investment DAOs usually make joint decisions with collective capital about how to invest. We are making completely individual decisions. And so we've gotten over and over again people saying, oh, you should, do this on chain. And, since you're a Web3 like collective, you guys can all like pool your funds and invest them together like on chain. And actually that goes against exactly what we're doing. And that's not to say that there isn't a good use case for those kinds of DAOs and that they, those can't be powerful as well. But so much of the time, I think the focus on trying to do everything on chain in a collective way is really compromising of individual sovereignty and off-chain relationship building, which is what we're really, really focused on. And so the irony of the thing is we don't exist legally. We're not actually a fund. We're not actually a cow either, for that matter, I should point out. It really is based on this like very informal, casual off-chain way. But the incentives that we built are you need to contribute and show up to calls, and otherwise you don't get to stay in the group. And so I think it's just important to remind ourselves that financial incentives are only one form of incentives, and they're often the worst one as well. And so they've been the easiest one for us to go to in DAOs, but there are far more powerful incentives, including negative incentives, social incentives, reputational incentives. And like even at jokedao, the contests that have been really, really popular and have done really well have not offered financial rewards. They've often offered social rewards of people wanting to go and campaign for their friends publicly on social media, et cetera, to try to win. So, it's just a reminder, I think, to all of us again that this over focus on the financial unlock of Web3 can actually be really limiting as well. In terms of where my mind is at and stuff I'm interested in, also Cosmos, so fascinating right now on just like every level. It's really kind of incredible over the past week or two that Bankless has just done nonstop coverage of Cosmos. That's been really good, really sharp, and part of what they've suggested in that, which I think is right, is that Ethereum is increasingly adopting a lot of Cosmos's theses. The app chain thesis that has been core to Cosmos from the beginning, that every app has their own chain, is not very far from Ethereum's roll-up thesis as well, right? And this fundamental idea that you need to have a modular blockchains where you have underlying security levels, but then people deploy their own chain on top. That's important. And then I think also having these kind of like interchain mechanisms for security where different people can validate each other's services by staking tokens and getting them slashed. Vitalik has like really talked about EigenLayer for doing this within the Ethereum ecosystem, and interchain security in Cosmos is a parallel to that. And so it's actually also really exciting. I was kind of negative on Ethereum for a while actually, and I have to say like looking at their recent roadmaps and where they're moving, and in many ways, many of the alliances ideologically with Cosmos, Ethereum is really exciting right now. It's a really, really exciting space. So yeah, I would say certainly Ethereum, and as obvious as that one sounds, and Cosmos are just really exciting. And then the final thing, I'm talking too much. Data storage, data indexing. There's all these possibilities for new types of blockchain design, where we've only designed blockchains for financial use cases, and financial use cases require, right, that you have to track everyone's account across the entire world all at once, because if one person's balance goes down, another goes up, right? And so you have to know every single person's account, and it's created a certain kind of design with certain problems associated with it that we're in the midst of solving. But if you start thinking about other types of data that are not financial data and don't have those global dependencies, it opens up the design space really, really greatly. So Arweave is really exciting here. People forget that Arweave is kind of like Ethereum, an underlying protocol for people to build on top of with SmartWeave. And so we're just starting to see all new use cases of new apps being built on top of that and that ecosystem. And then stuff like Bundler, which is built on top of Arweave. It's just really, really exciting in terms of like offering new possibilities for stuff like temporary storage, and mutable storage, right, as well. And I would put, Ceramic, Lit, like all of these projects, right, are really looking at like what happens when we expand the scope of blockchains and decentralization past just financial use cases towards all new forms of encryption, privacy, sovereignty of data, etc. And I think it's going to be pretty mind-blowing to see how that plays out. Because in some way, those are easier problems to solve than some of the financial stuff too. So it actually wouldn't be too surprising if we see bigger gains in those areas over the next few years than we do in the financial use cases, which are still dealing with stuff like state bloat and a lot of challenges ahead.
I like your take on it. Sometimes it's these side quests and side DAOs that actually bring out a new thought or a passion project that can actually evolve into something more or have something more meaningful to give. And I'm excited to see what else you come up with in the future. And I want to thank you guys both for joining me today, and really, really insightful. And I think our community is going to love this episode. You guys bring a lot of fire and vibrance to the space. So I want to thank you guys both. And where can our audience find you on your social platforms?
Yeah, thanks for having us on. My Twitter is _Kinjal B Shah, and I'm active there, and you can message me as well.
I'm divine_economy on Twitter, and you can email me at david@cowfund.co.
Amazing. We're going to link everything down below, and don't forget to check out both of them and their projects. And I see you guys in the next episode of NEWFORUM. Thank you so much.